Islam is taking over and there's nothing you can do. That's what a Muslim in UK just said, just before he blamed the Jew. But he may find out his lofty plans won't go as he expects. The fate of the West is in God's hands, and the righteous he protects. And that's the sermon for this week, ladies and gentlemen. That is the poem, the inspiration that was given to me. Anybody tries to write something like it, they will fail. In any case, we are here for This Week in Jihad. I believe David Wood is here. David, are you here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just sending out the link and bam, done. All right.
Boom. Okay. Tommy Robinson is free. That's the big news this week. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, sporting a very stylish beard that I understand he has already cut off. So that's a shame. But it's good news in kind of a limited way, which we'll explain in a moment, that he's out. But can you give us some of the background here, sir?
So that is indeed Tommy's beard. Some of us thought it would have been hilarious if he got out and pretended that he had converted to Islam and run with that for a few days, and all the Dawa guys would have asked him to come on their channels to explain things, and then he could have gotten onto a really big one and then gone, ha ha, psych. But no, he went and shaved it. Now, what's interesting, Robert, and I'm thinking about making a quick little video about this, is he's got a cross and a rosary there.
Yes. I thought that was interesting indeed.
Yeah, I'd always thought that I thought that he was an atheist based on things that he said, but I can't think of anything specific. But I asked people during a live stream yesterday, and everyone said, yeah, he was an atheist or an agnostic or something like that. So. But then Tusi from Tusi TV said that he converted in prison. But I only heard that from Tusi. And then, of course, Tommy's there wearing a cross. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what actually happened. But yeah, Tommy spent 7 months in solitary.
Incredible.
I've been locked up before. One, I've never seen anyone in prison for the kinds of things that Tommy was in prison for. The sort of like contempt of court and doing this and that. These are things that you would get in the U.S. Even if you like really push something really hard, contempt of court or something like that, you're talking a fine, and you're talking like, what, 30 days in jail? Or normally contempt of court, they put you in jail and then you get out a couple hours later or something like that. But if it was like extreme contempt of court, you're talking like 30 days in jail or something like that. But anyway, so he does all these things, which should be, even if he's guilty, should be something like a fine or something like a quick jail stay. But they keep putting him in prison. And then when he's in prison now, Robert, I was told the entire time, so these entire 7 months, whenever I bring up Tommy being in solitary, and I would say something about it, people would say, yes, but he wanted to be in solitary. He was given the choice of either being in solitary or being put into the general population. He doesn't want to get killed, and so he chooses solitary. He got out and said that's a total lie. He told them, I would rather fight every day of my life than have you just like destroying me psychologically. So he wanted to be in general population. They wouldn't let him. But I have to say, I do have a little experience being in solitary. I wasn't there being punished. I was in there because of mental health issues. So anyway, they'd stick me in solitary. And if you spend some time, significant amount of time in solitary, you start acting weird. And I don't know why. Probably ask people about this, but I think it's just when you're communicating with other people, you're using a part of your brain. And if you're not around other people communicating and interacting, you're just not using that part of the brain, and it just atrophies like a muscle or something like that. And then by the time you start talking to people, you're acting weird. So I'm saying that from experience. I've seen that before. And when he got out of prison in 2018, he was acting like he had PTSD. He was acting weird. He looked like messed up in his face. So what's interesting is I thought he was going to be significantly worse because that was just after a couple months in solitary last time. So I thought he was going to come out significantly worse this time, but just seemed like his regular self, and instantly was calling for a rally and instantly giving speeches and stuff. So anyway, it's a question of why he's so much better off this time than he was last time. And got two basic theories. One, he came out with two massive carts of mail. I'm talking like huge bins of mail that had been to people who wrote him while he was in prison, and he said that's after they'd already brought out several loads of mail. So, and he said he read everything. So people were writing him constantly. That probably helped. And the other thing is, if he was getting right with God while he's in there somehow, that probably helped him. But anyway, he's noticeably better getting out of
Yes.
prison than he was last time.
Yes, and yet it's May 28th. In a week, he's due back in court, and is very possible that he will go back into prison, especially in light of the fact that he has said that sorry, lost my train of thought. He has said that the freedom of speech is under attack in Britain, and consequently he's going to have this big rally in September. And I think that's just the kind of thing that's going to land him in prison again, because the British authorities are indeed just as bad as they say. And so it's going to be a rough time for him, I'm afraid.
And it's kind of smart because so he's going to have a big rally, and they can either let him go through with the rally, in which case people will be much more active, or they can lock him up again to try and shut down the rally, in which case they're just proving his point. That's the amazing thing. I mean, every time they keep coming after him, and the entire time they're proving his point every single time. So yeah, it's wild stuff. I just have to say, is everyone in the U.S. is as messed up as things get here. Just rejoice that things could be significantly worse. You could be in the UK.
Yes, and there are people there who speak out about these issues to some degree, but nobody has been out there talking about things that nobody else dares to talk about the activities of the Muslim rape gangs, the Islamic character of the rape gang activity. Nobody but Tommy has been out there on that. And this is why the British government has been targeting him, why they want to destroy him, quite literally, why they treat him this way in prison, why they keep throwing him in prison. If he were a leftist activist who had done every last one of the things that he's accused of doing and being jailed for doing, he might get, like you said, some kind of token fine, maybe that, if that. And he would be being lionized in the press everywhere. But because he's calling attention to these things that the British government and media establishment wants covered up, he's persona non grata. He's public enemy number one. And so, there are people who they criticize Tommy. I've known Tommy myself for many years, and sometimes people come up and they say, well, Tommy does this or that. You got to understand, this is bigger than Tommy at this point. Tommy is the symbol, like it or not, of the freedom of Britain and its attempt to stave off becoming conquered and Islamized. And he is the main person standing in the breach there. Everybody should be standing behind him if they want to see Britain continue as a free society.
Yeah, and for people who weren't following it back in the day, hey, everyone, you know how you've heard of these grooming gangs and that tens of thousands of young British girls were groomed, raped, gang raped, drugged, pimped, and so on? You still may have not heard about that if it weren't for Tommy Robinson, because everyone was trying to cover it up. All the politicians were trying to cover it up. To be fair, there were a couple of exceptions here and there and stuff, but they'd just get drowned out, and they'd be targeted if they brought it up. Journalists across the board, everyone knew what was going on. Everyone in places of authority, they all knew this was going on, and they were all keeping it quiet because they were told, if you bring this up, you're a racist, because you have to say it's a bunch of Muslims raping a bunch of white British girls. And so it was just, they all knew, keep your mouth closed about that. They were all terrified. And Tommy Robinson was by far the main guy who was blowing the whistle on this thing. And what did they do? Congratulate him? No, they have been at war with him ever since. And so Then they've been blasting him on this for years. That's why they're going after him. But he kept speaking more and more and more until eventually politicians and journalists actually had to comment on it, and people around the world find out about it. But because they were already going after him and he's exposing them for trying to silence him, then he becomes a guy who keeps talking about freedom of speech and how the government is suppressing people's ability to even draw attention to these things. And this is what they keep proving him right on, because it was that communist dude or something like that who said, show me the guy and I'll find you the crime. Meaning I can point to someone and I will find, if you want that guy locked up, I will find something. I will go after him hard enough to find something to lock him up for. And you see what they're doing. It's like, oh, contempt of court, and we're going to toss you in prison and stuff. It's like, I'd never heard of that before, but they're proving all of that correct. Mm-hmm. If we don't like you and we don't like what you're saying, and we don't like you drawing attention to what we're doing, we'll just come up to you and say, hey, give us the password on your phone. No. Okay, you're going to prison. That's what they're doing. That's the level of stuff that they're doing to Tommy right now. So hats off to him. But man, that place sucks over there. Sucks. Love to go to his rally in September. Sadly, I'm not allowed there, and you're not allowed there.
Yeah, I was thinking, man, that would be one thing I would not miss, but I'm gonna miss it. In any case, yeah, everything.
Hey, hang on. Maybe we should pretend to convert to Islam, and then they'll let us in, and we go to the rally. Hey, we'll go there dressed in full Islamic gear. We'll get up on stage, and then, we pull it off. It's still us.
And then we spend the next 6 months in the British prison. Yeah, that would be great. One thing you said there were some politicians who spoke about this. Actually, I got to say, I just finished writing a book. It'll be out in November, called Holy Hell, Islam's Abuse of Women and the Infidels Who Enabled It. It's got a lot of chapters about the rape gangs in Britain, and the fact is that they did not have politicians who said what Tommy was saying. There were some politicians who spoke out about the problem, but none of them dared to go the whole way and say what the problem really was. Sarah Champion was in the Labour Party, which is now the ruling party, but at that time it was the minority party, and she was in the shadow cabinet. And Sarah Champion actually said about 8 years ago that we have to confront the fact that the rape gangs are mostly Pakistani. And for that, she was made to resign from the shadow cabinet. She was accused of racism and Islamophobia, the whole 9 yards. And she didn't even say that it was Muslims or that it had anything to do with Islam. She actually explicitly denied that and said, well, there's some Pakistani Christians and they could be involved in this too, and completely dissembled about the Islamic theological background behind this activity. And so Tommy really was standing out amid all that in being not afraid to tell the truth about the whole truth about all this. And this is why he's so targeted by the government.
And what's weird is there's one more component there to why they're so hostile against Tommy, which we're not really familiar with in the U.S. But they have like this. They're elitists over there. It's like if you're an Oxford educated person, then maybe you can talk about this stuff. If you're just working class person, you have to keep your mouth shut and know your place. Whereas like in the United States, as messed up as we are in other ways and stuff, we don't think, oh, this person is working class, therefore he's not allowed to speak on these kinds of things. But there, I mean, it's been pointed out multiple times, what Tommy Robinson is saying is basically no different from what Douglas Murray is saying. Mm-hmm. But Douglas Murray can go on every show and be all over the place and saying these things because he speaks with the accent of someone from Oxford, like an Oxford professor or something like that. He has the smart, posh British accent of like people like Richard Dawkins and Douglas Murray and like the intelligentsia, whereas Tommy Robinson sounds like a guy who works at the local factory or something like that, and they lose their mind. So it's one, he's talking about things that he shouldn't be talking about, but two, his class isn't even allowed to speak on these things. So we just have to lock him up. But he drives them nuts.
That's it. That's exactly it. And meanwhile, also in Britain, you probably saw the video of this fellow. He was saying, white people, Islam is taking over, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what I was referring to in the beginning of the poem this evening or morning or afternoon, wherever this is. He was boasting about how Islam is on its way to taking over the UK, and any infidels like Tommy Robinson who might think that they could stop it were deluded. It was unstoppable, and there is nothing that the infidels can do to reverse it. If that is true, it's the fault of the British government today, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. It's not. It's not the strength of Islam or anything. It's the weakness and cowardice and stupidity of Western governments and politicians and journalists and so on.
Precisely. And I tell you, the weakness is comprehensive and multifaceted, David. It is everywhere. And here's more of it. This is Ari Mahmoud. And he's such a charming fellow. I want to make his face as big as possible here, because I think that is a face that bespeaks deep spiritual trouble. And in any case, Ari Mahmoud, he is in prison today in the UK for taking part, along with his brother, Mahmoud, of his niece, that is Mahmoud's daughter, Banaz Mahmoud. And she was killed after she left an abusive arranged marriage. All right? And so this is a classic honor-killing story. And Ari Mahmoud's in prison now. And in 2020, there was a documentary and a drama made about the killing. And in it, he was accused of raping or overseeing the rape of the poor girl by 3 of her cousins. And so he says that didn't happen. And he's suing on that basis. And this is what he said when he was suing. He's not suing because they said he was involved in the honor killing. He's suing because of the rape allegation. He said, in my country, murder is normal. In my country,
he's got
murder,
a point.
Murder is normal. He's from Iraq. After served time, you have a new opportunity. In my culture, the main things they react against me was the rape allegation. And so he's complaining that he says, speaking about himself in the third person, almost all statements in the documentary left no doubts the allegation of rape was with Ari's blessing. In the Islamic community, rape is taboo. It is the highest level of crime. Now, David, if that's true, then what about all these stories of the rape? We were just talking about the rape gangs. And this guy's getting upset because he was accused of rape or overseeing rape of his niece. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, I think it was Douglas Murray who pointed out, I forget which city, maybe Rotherham or something like that. But he pointed out that they did the math and like 1 in 8 of all the Pakistani Muslims were involved in the rape gangs. And he says what that means is if the percentage is that high, that means everyone knows what's going on. Even the people who aren't involved know what's going on. You see these guys going around with these 12-year-old British girls and so on. So everyone knows that it's going on. So why is no one doing anything if it's so shameful to be doing that kind of thing? So
also, what's the difference between a 12-year-old British girl and Banaz Mahmoud?
Well, one, she would be kind of part of their group ethnically, then would also be part of her group, part of their group religiously, but it sounds like they're putting her in the apostate category if they're doing an honor killing. So she'd be in the apostate category. And there, the penalty is death. So you actually wouldn't mind carrying out the penalty or doing an honor killing because that's what you're supposed to do. The rape wouldn't be required. But by the way, I've heard that before. There's a woman who lives in California. She never wants to go public with this, but she's told people, she shares it in private. She doesn't ever want to be known for this. But anyway, she left Islam, and it was her uncle. Her uncle got a group of men together and basically said, okay, if you're choosing to be a non-Muslim, we're going to treat you like a non-Muslim. And they gang raped her. So anyway, that thing happens in certain places, that we're gonna punish you in this way, in order to lead you back to Islam and teach you to be a good girl.
It's also very common in the Islamic Republic of Iran that women who are imprisoned are often raped, especially if they're getting the death penalty, so that they will end up in hell. Because if they're raped, of course, it's their fault for enticing the men and not preventing their arousal, and consequently they will be punished in hellfire. And so a lot of times women who are about to be executed are raped first, so that not only are they killed in this world, but they are then tortured forever by Allah in the next. And so that also is part of the mindset. But all that would lead us to the conclusion that Ari Mahmoud may be putting us on here. He may not be being 100%. I know it's hard to believe, but he may not be being 100% honest. Or maybe he thinks that if he can make this stick, he can get a good payday out of the British courts, which I think is probably a very good assumption.
Hey, Robert, if you want to do something, fun, do a quick Google search for Master Ken from Enter the Dojo afterwards, or you can do it now. It would only take a second.
But, I don't know what that is.
Master Ken. He's a a kind of parody martial artist, even though he is a black belt in real life, but looks exactly like that dude. I think his hair's a little darker, but guy looks just like Master Ken.
I see. Yeah. Let me see if I can get this. All right, we're getting there here, David. It's on track. This is the guy?
Yep, Master Ken. Doesn't he look like him?
All right, let's get Ari back. Yeah.
You see it now?
Oh, dear. Well, sorry, Ken. No hard feelings, eh, buddy? All right. Got a lot of stories here, David. So let's move on. Did you see this video out of Fairfax County, Virginia? Jamal Wali, ordinary traffic stop, and the video is quite fascinating on several levels.
Is that where dude shot the cops?
Yeah, exactly. And then they killed him in self-defense. But Jamal Wali was an Afghan migrant. He aided the U.S. military in Afghanistan and was brought over here after the war. And I thought it was very interesting. The first I heard about this story was on a local network story in the Fairfax County, Virginia area that somebody sent to me, and it had parts of the video interspersed with commentary from the news people, the anchor people. And it was very interesting because at one point in the video, Jamal Wali says, "I should have served with the Taliban. They're better than you." And so I'm watching along this video, and it was wild because you hear him say, "I should have served with the Taliban," and then they cut off and they go back to one of the network talking heads talking about the whole issue. And I thought, did he say Taliban? What? And I found the whole video. I recommend you all find the whole video. If I had any technological knowledge, I know I would be showing the video here, but I'm sorry, I'm old. Anyway, he says, "I should have served with the Taliban." And it was very interesting to me that it was right at that point that the local news show cut it off. And it was very interesting to me that I think once again we see them try to whitewash the connection to Islamic Jihad. The guy was not a jihadi. He was not Taliban. He was very upset and frustrated with life in the U.S. And I think the fact that he ended up shooting at the cops and getting killed himself is yet another example of what happens when you bring somebody over from a culture that sanctifies violence and says violence can be is good and proper and blessed by Allah under certain circumstances. It's the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah, and totally normal, and people aren't taught to control their anger and so on. You just let it all out with violence. But yeah, so I didn't see the video you're talking about with the news commentary, but I imagine it would have went something like this. On the darker side of the news, police shot a completely harmless driver after a random traffic stop. Here's this perfectly innocent man. What are you talking about? I should go with the teller. And we won't show you the rest, but needless to say.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. They did cut out. The guy kept calling the cop American. He would say, "Now, American, you want to see my license?" Or, stuff like that. And they cut out all of that. Anything that might give you the impression that he was not happy in the country, that he had sympathy for the Taliban, none of that was in the report. It was a very interesting example of how the news media whitewashes jihad news or jihad-related news. Like I say, this guy wasn't a jihadi, but he comes from a place where you don't like how things are going, you start shooting, and that's what he did.
And this is actually connected to what we were just talking about with the UK, although they're significantly worse off and further along than we are, that by constantly screaming about Islamophobia, you train politicians and journalists to do this, to whitewash whatever you're doing, to look past everything, and to exaggerate what other people are doing so that you don't look as bad by comparison and so on. So that's the situation in the UK, and the end result of falling for that, the end result of politicians and journalists falling for that, is you get things like the rape gangs, and it continues for decades, and no one calls it out because everyone is terrified. Just keep in mind. So you have the same thing in the US, and it's groups like CARE that are working tirelessly to create that sort of environment where after an Islamic terrorist attack, they don't want you saying that there was an Islamic terrorist attack. They don't want you mentioning Muslim. They don't want any mention of a Muslim anywhere in the article and so on. And so they scream Islamophobia whenever anyone points out what's going on. And the goal is to create a society where everyone is terrified to point out what's going on. And they can program entire governments over time. It takes a while, but you can program entire governments to carry out Sharia compliance for you. And that's exactly what we see going on with Tommy.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it's all related. And here's another one that is also, in a certain sense, related to all this. And this is a story out of Israel, but it concerns an American, Joseph Neumeyer, who is a dual citizen of the United States and Germany. And he was arrested in connection with an attempt to destroy the branch office of the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. And even though he is a U.S. citizen, he posted on social media. These guys are always posting on social media like total idiots. You might get the impression that they're total idiots. Anyway, he said, "Join me as I burn down the embassy in Tel Aviv. Death to America, death to Americans, and F the West." Joseph Neumeyer. And so you got to wonder, Joseph Neumeyer, he's not a Muslim, he's not a jihadi. Why is he out there trying to destroy a U.S. embassy, the embassy of his own country, for Hamas? But he's been told these are the people that are on the side of justice, these are the people that are good and right, and he's never heard, I'm sure, about Islamic Jihad or anything related to it.
Yeah, total. I mean, total brainwashed morons everywhere right now. I mean, think about
Indeed.
this, Robert. You got Hamas. You go back just 10, 15 years ago, people understood Hamas is pretty evil. And, all the stuff these guys do, killing and raping, torturing their own people. If anyone objects to anything they say, they bring in the aid trucks. Hamas instantly seizes them, keeps it for themselves, or they sell it to people at a massively hiked up rate, and then they'll shoot you if you get out of line. I'm talking about their own people. They want endless terrorism. They want death for both sides, right? That's in their founding charter. They want death for the Jews. They want the Jews completely wiped out. And they actually quote Muhammad's prophecy there that the end won't come until Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are crying out, "Ya Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come kill him." So they admit that in like Article 7 of their charter. And then the very next article, Article 8, says that their loftiest goal is death for the sake of Allah, for themselves. But I mean, think about that. We want our enemies dead, and we want to die too. That's the definition of a death cult. You've got all these idiots on every college campus in America going, "Oh, these are the heroes. These are the brave, wonderful people." It's like, you're lunatic. This is an actual death and rape cult, and you're worshiping them.
Yep. It's crazy times. Speaking of crazy times, this is Tarek Bazrouk. And you can see that Tarek Bazrouk was one of the people out there demonstrating in favor of Hamas. And there he is making the one-finger ISIS salute, or the one-finger Tawhid salute, whatever you want to call it. And or he was making an emphatic point.
He's a proctologist, and he's about to give an exam.
Yeah, that must be it. And he's...
I can Photoshop that with... Hey, I'll say he's one of the men of Al-Zut. Photoshop him with Muhammad. Anyway.
All right. Tarek Bazrouk. He's accused of assaulting pro-Israel protesters at a counter-protest. And so the law enforcement officers were searching his apartment in Manhattan, and they found $750,000 in a safe in cash. $750,000. And he said, his lawyer rather said, "Oh, that's perfectly innocent. That's just the money he's earned from a smoke shop that he works at in Connecticut." And I was thinking, man,
good stuff.
Yeah.
We're in the wrong business, Robert.
$750,000. What's his hourly wage, man? Incredible. Because it didn't say he owned the place either, even if he did own it. I don't know, but I mean, it said that he just worked there. And I think he's 20 years old and he's got 750 grand. He couldn't have been working more than a couple years, and yet, anyway, I suspect, yeah, I suspect this money is perhaps supplied by some wealthy proponent of jihad against Israel, and they are hoping that he will use it in that jihad. But that's just a guess. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe it's completely on the up and up. And we haven't even talked about the foremost. I think it was actually the evening. It was the day after or hours after we did the show. Did we talk about Elias Rodriguez last week? I don't even remember now.
I don't recall because I know I've talked about that, but I don't remember if that was with you or with AP.
Yeah, well, anyway, the whole world knows Elias Rodriguez murdered a couple people outside the Jewish Museum in D.C., shot at Free Palestine. And the worst thing is all these people who have been praising him since then. And it's like the world has gone mad. They think that this is praiseworthy behavior. I don't think they really understand where this is going to lead. And I'll tell you where. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think I did cover that with AP. So, yeah, I don't think you and I talked about it.
Well, anyway, it was essentially a week ago now And there've been all these people out there praising him. There's a guy. Have you ever heard of Guy? You must have heard of him, Guy Christensen. He's got 3 million followers on TikTok.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him, but yeah, I saw that. I saw that after he posted it, that little idiot
Incredible.
cheering on. That's what I mean. Like, and he's like I think he's like a 17-year-old Mormon or something like that. But he's posting videos. Yeah, you can get millions of followers spouting that nonsense. But it was really creepy, cheering for people who just randomly go kill people walking out of a Jewish museum. One of them was a Christian, um, and the woman, they were about to be engaged. The woman was there attending a panel on how to get more aid to the people of Gaza, and gunned
Oh
them
my
down.
goodness.
And then you have 17-year-old Mormons. Yeah, you see, they deserve it. They got what they deserve. Go do some more. Bunch of lunatics.
Yep. It's just it's a sickness that's all around the world. In Yemen, video came out of a recent rally of the Houthis, and you've got these little kids. Uh, this is, people are saying Israel is killing children in Gaza, which is false propaganda. But the fact is that this is what's happening with children in real life. In Yemen, this boy at this rally comes up to the camera and he says, addressing the United States, "We will drink your blood and shake your throne. We will finish you off. We will starve you. Although America possesses nuclear weapons, it is weaker than a spider web." And then all the kids got together and chanted, "Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to Israel, curses upon the Jews, victory to Islam," which of course is the Houthi slogan. A girl said, "Your blood is fair game for us, and our swords are drawn until we purify the land from your filth." The first kid comes back, "We stand with Gaza in the face of the crimes of genocide and starvation. We say to you, America, we will drink your blood and shake your throne. We will finish you off. We will starve you." And all this again and again. "Oh, here, we will fight you on every battlefield. We will lie in wait for you on every street corner. No occupier or collaborator will escape our might. This is our promise and our threat. Your blood is fair game for us. Our swords are drawn until we purify the land from your filth and make it pure again. Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to Israel, cursed upon the Jews, victory to Islam. We heed your call, O Al-Aqsa Mosque." It's inspiring, isn't it?
Remember when I was talking about a death cult?
There you go. This is a
No,
death
I mean, think about that. I mean, we generally try to protect kids from things. Try to protect kids like that from. We protect them from that until they're like older. Any groups that really try to go after kids with this stuff in particular and brainwash them into this stuff, it's pretty creepy. But I mean, think about that. It's like, as you pointed out, people complain about Israel. Look what Israel's doing. I mean, they're taking kids and then turning them into jihadis. Why don't you have a problem with that, people?
Indeed. Because they don't know what jihad is, and they think it's all America's fault and Israel's fault. And they don't think through what the implications of this are going to be when these kids grow up and come
And I mean, think
at
about
us.
that. You've already sentenced these kids to death. You sentenced these kids to death. You're training them that the greatest thing they can possibly do is die while slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah. It's a matter of time before, and these kids are surrounded by jihadis. These are all their role models and stuff, and then you brainwash them into thinking, yeah, you can actually do it against the United States. Do it. You can take on the United States. You can win. And then they go do it, and then they all get killed.
Yep. Well, that's in the Hadith. Isn't there a Hadith where Muhammad says that you can beat a far more formidable enemy if you got Allah on your side? And of course, that's the whole lesson of the Battle of Badr. It's stressed in the Quran as well. So they don't have a chance, these kids.
It's just weird. I mean, have you seen Muslims win an actual battle in a long time?
My goodness, that's a good question. You'd probably have to go back to some Ottoman battle.
Yeah, Constantinople.
There's probably one after that.
I know. I've read the history of jihad, Robert. Robert, there's a book called The History of Jihad. You need to
Is that
read it.
right?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
That sounds great.
People don't people don't know if they don't follow Robert on X that people always
Yes.
Robert people who aren't familiar with Robert will respond to some random tweet he makes. They'll be like, Robert, you need to learn about jihad.
Yeah, there was that guy the other day. You need to learn the history of jihad. Yes. You never know. I'm sure there's more. There's always more. Germany, David. Germany. 24-year-old man last Tuesday night. Walking around in Berlin. 5 unknown men come up to him. Ask him if he's a Muslim. He says, no, I was baptized a Christian. And so they start beating him repeatedly on the head. He suffered facial injuries. The attackers, according to Bild, the German publication, are believed to be men of Arab descent. What was your first clue there, I wonder? In any case, so that's something we've seen all over the world, is it not? They ask him if he's a Muslim. He says he's a Christian. They start beating him, like the Westgate Mall in Kenya, or St. Cloud Mall in Minnesota. All right, this was a story that I found particularly distasteful. This is a church in Athens, Greece, and you see that it has been covered with graffiti. Zionists not welcome. Interesting to note that the graffiti is all in English there in Athens. All Israeli war soldiers are war murderers. Palestine will be free, free Gaza, stop genocide, etc. So, it's a shame. I was in Athens last year, and it's a beautiful city. And one of the wonderful things about it, particularly for me as an Orthodox Christian, is that there are Orthodox churches on practically every block. You're just walking along, and there's a little Orthodox church. You go in, the beautiful icons, you say some prayers. It's just a wonderful city in that regard. And these people tagging it with this, it's interesting because, after all, what on earth does a Greek Orthodox church in Athens have to do with Palestine and Israel?
Not much, except you have Quran verses that the Jews and Christians are allies of each other, and then of course you have Muslims who still have a problem with the Greeks because of the problem with the Ottomans and so on. But yeah, it just seems they go after any non-Muslims in these situations. I have been to Greece multiple times, and I have noticed that the graffiti is generally in English. They understand. Hey, you want to get it out there? You want to get it out there? Put it in English.
Yeah, they want the international news, and so that's why they're writing it in English. Also, everybody speaks English, pretty much, in Athens anyway. I found. In any case, okay, we got other graffiti out of France, and that is, all right, it's going to be right over here, David. I got them all together. There we go. That is a cemetery. It's a close-up of the graffiti, but this is a picture from a cemetery in France, and 58 graves in this cemetery were covered with graffiti such as "Submit to Allah," or, as this one shows, "France belongs to Allah." Other tombstones were covered with the word Gwer, G-W-E-R, which is a word, I believe the Turkish word, if I'm not mistaken, for unbeliever, for infidel. And so you got this graffiti announcing that France belongs to Allah in a Christian cemetery, right there with the crosses on the graves and so on. Is the choice of the venue for this accidental or incidental?
I'm going to go with no, Robert.
I think you're right, David.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could explain to the viewing audience.
Well, what I was actually I was thinking about something different. I'm always thinking about the hypocrisy, namely that if someone had so much looked inappropriately at a Muslim grave while walking by, it would be international news for the next 2 months about how Islamophobic everyone is. But you can report on these things every single week because these things keep happening, and no one seems to care.
Yes. Somebody has commented, guerre means war. Yeah, the word was not that. The word was Gwer, guer, which is, I believe, a Turkish word for infidel. In any case, the graffiti is also in the Christian cemetery as if to indicate, amid all, I mean, where else are you going to find other than a church, all these crosses together, all these public expressions of the Christian faith. And so you get there all these declarations that Allah is supreme and Allah will conquer. It's once again showing, Islam is superior, Islam is victorious, Islam must dominate and not be dominated, as Muhammad said. And so it's always about supremacy. But make no mistake, these things are not accidental. Okay, we have my favorite country, Iceland. We had an interesting story. Out of Iceland, there was a stabbing. And there was a video. I don't know if you saw the video, David. But the video, this is a still from the video. This fellow over here on the left, he stabs a guy. You don't see that on the video, but you see him with his big knife. And then the lady with the hijab and this other guy come walking out toward him. And then you see the victim, and he's clutching his side where he's been stabbed. And you see this guy, and everybody's yelling. And that's basically the whole video. And this was reported in the English language Reykjavik grapevine as a domestic dispute. And there was no other detail given about what had happened. Now, you watch the video, it's very clear that these people are not Icelandic. And by the way, somebody's saying, you have a favorite country? No, I do not have a favorite country, and Iceland is most decidedly not my favorite country. I spoke there a few years back and was poisoned by a leftist there, spent the night in the ER, and it is not... And then the charges were all dropped by the government because they didn't want the trouble. So in any case, this was the experience I had in Iceland. It's not, I was being sarcastic about it being my favorite place. So also, yet more corrections here. Turkish does not have the letter W. Yeah, it was a phonetic spelling. I don't think these guys in the cemetery are literary geniuses here. The word, I've actually seen it spelled with an OU and IAOU and so on. And so, in any case, it's Guer or Guar. You can look it up in Turkish lexicons. In any case, back to Iceland. In Iceland, the Icelandic story tells a little bit of a different, gives us a little bit of a different picture. They do say that it seems to be a domestic dispute, but there is a whole lot more detail. And one of the residents of the area where the stabbing happened says, yesterday this man started screaming long before the incident happened. Someone driving here like a baboon, back and forth. I don't know how baboons drive. I don't know. Do you know, David? Have you seen baboons drive?
Yes.
Well, okay, then you...
Oh,
you
that
can...
was a dog. I just saw a video about people training a dog to drive.
Oh, well, that must be it.
But obviously, if you can train a dog to drive, you can train a baboon.
Okay. So he goes on, there's a collision on the corner, and from there he stabs the man. I don't know what the person who was stabbed had in his hands. Maybe it was a wrench. And then the resident of the area says, there was a shooting here at one time. Then the kids saw bloodstains on their way to school. Then another man with a machete broke down a door and started screaming. They think, and then another resident says, they think it's strange that it's like this. It's very strange in Iceland today. Do residents feel safe? No. You've heard of women who are being followed into the parking garage. They're afraid of these men. Now, where have we heard that kind of thing before?
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. But I think that in connection with migrants who are indeed overwhelmingly Muslim, the idea of a neighborhood that has suddenly become unsafe and women are afraid to go out, it's pretty clear what's happening here. It might not be, it might all be coincidence, but it's fairly clear what's happening here. And of course, the Icelandic press covers it up. The story in Icelandic gives enough detail to figure it out, but the Icelandic press in English completely ignores it. And yes, somebody says Iceland isn't ready. That's absolutely true. When I was there, this Icelandic guy, very nice fellow, one of the people who brought me over, he and I were talking, and he was saying, we're completely unprepared for this. We haven't gone to war in 1,000 years. And these people are coming in, and they're acting aggressively and sometimes violently, and nobody knows what to do. And of course, I was treated like the great villain for saying this is an Islamic Jihad problem, and ended up getting poisoned for calling attention to it. So Iceland is going to go the way of everybody else in Europe, it looks like.
Yeah, for a long time, back in I was in college. I was a double major in biology and philosophy. So I got a biology degree, and I took ecology. And for a while, I've been wanting to make a video explaining what's going on with Islam, but in terms of ecology, because you can actually read like basic principles of ecology, and it sounds exactly like you're talking about this. So what they'll say is, as far as what you were just talking about there, they'll point out that in an ecosystem, so you have, like, let's say a forest or something like that, you have an ecosystem, everything eventually reaches a state of equilibrium, right? Because if one thing ever takes off too much and gets out of, like if one species reproduces too much, they'll use up all the resources and stuff, and so they'll start dying out, and it'll balance out again. But one of the principles was, when it comes to an invasive species, one of the biggest problems in ecology is when you have an invasive species, so something comes from a different area. If in that area it had to be much more aggressive because of all kinds of fighting with with members of its own species, or fighting other species and so on, it just, in order to survive, has to be significantly more aggressive. And then it moves into an area as an invasive species, in an area where things aren't aggressive and things get along, it will just completely wreak havoc, and none of the other species can actually respond to it because they haven't had to. Whereas this thing has been trained, this species has been trained for its entire existence to be aggressive and to fight everything around it. And people and the other species don't know how to react and stuff. It's just, anyway, just reading ecology sounds exactly like dealing with, put it this way, everyone, you want a fun little experiment, look up an article on invasive species and then think about Islam, and every single principle is a perfect parallel.
There you go. Okay, this was a fun story, David. Out of the UK, we had there was going to be an Islamophobia training seminar for psychotherapists, so that they could understand the effects of Islamophobia on the poor psyche of the victims of Islamophobia. And that is Professor Ghazal Amir, who was going to be one of the teachers in this Islamophobia training session. But then it turned out that these professors, Ghazal Amir, a professor of health equity and inclusion at the University of Leeds, Dr. Tariq Yunus, senior lecturer in psychology at Middlesex University, and Professor Ahmed Hankir, a consultant psychiatrist and visiting professor at the University of Cardiff, they were accused of anti-Semitism. And so the Islamophobia seminar had to be canceled for now.
Isn't that interesting? Again, it's always the hypocrisy. The same people who will say anytime you point out anything a Muslim does, it's you're basically the worst person in the world. They're the same people who will turn right around, Jews, 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 all day long.
That's
And
it.
they're the same people who, um, even if there's an Islamic terrorist attack and hundreds of people are killed or whatever, they'll say, don't associate this with any other Muslim on the planet. If you do, you're an Islamophobe. But these are the same people who will get that Jew because of what? Because of what the IDF did to that terrorist over there. It's weird. It's insane.
It's so insane. Do you want more insanity? I got it. In case you came to This Week in Jihad this week for a big dose of insanity, this is somewhere. Here it is. A placard that a guy in Britain was holding during a demonstration. And this is supposed to be the late Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah, and he's answering his pager, and you know what's going to happen, you know? And so this guy, a Jewish protester, was arrested by the Metropolitan Police this week after he briefly held a placard satirizing a Hezbollah terrorist leader. During questioning, police repeatedly asked the man, who was part of a counter-demonstration against a pro-Palestinian march, if he believed the image would offend pro-Hezbollah activists. I know. It strikes one speechless. What can you say? So the guy is arrested for offending Hezbollah in Britain today, not in.
Are you along the same lines? Because that reminded me of the story I just saw earlier today that the Free Speech Union put out. But it was the same. It was the same idea that person. Oh yeah, it was a follow up on the story of that guy who burned a Quran and then a guy attacked him, but the guy who burned the Quran is now in court for offending the guy who attacked him with a knife, and as evidence that the guy who attacked him with a knife was offended was the fact that he attacked him with the knife. They're saying, well, it's obviously obviously you offended that man. That's why he attacked you with a knife. So you obviously caused offense. So that's what I was thinking when you were telling that story. Hey, you think this will cause offense? They want you to admit it. They want you to admit that you're doing something to cause offense because that's a crime there now.
Man.
Isn't it insane? Like if you say, hey, I'm offended that the Quran calls for my violent subjugation and it says it's okay to, have sex with prepubescent girls. I'm offended at all this and what it says about Jews and Christians and so on. I don't care about any of that. And they don't care. They don't care if the Dawa guys are shouting this stuff from the rooftops, talking about how they're going to kill apostates. They're totally fine. Ali Dawa says on his YouTube channel, he can't wait for when he gets an opportunity to watch all the apostates being executed and stuff. He says he's going to eat popcorn. They have zero problem with that. If an ex-Muslim goes up to police, I'm really bothered by this. And I know this because they did. They went to police and then, oh, this is just passionate debate. So we can't criticize them for that. Meanwhile, they'll lock you up. Here's the thing, Robert. If you have a Muslim saying, I can't wait to kill all these ex-Muslims, that's fine. That's just spirited debate. We all know if it was reversed and it was an ex-Muslim saying, I can't wait till we get to kill Muslims, that person would be locked up in 5 seconds.
Yes. That's right. That's Britain today.
That's why they call it two-tier.
Yep. Two-tier Kier is also sending, it was revealed this week, millions of pounds to Hamas. He is funding Hamas. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The British government is funding Hamas. Of course, so was the Biden administration. These things are called humanitarian aid, and they say, oh, it won't be used for weapons. But, it's basic economics, people. If you got more money, you spend it on more stuff. And if somebody says, you can only spend this money on X, then you'll spend it on X, but it frees up your other money to spend on Y. It's not hard to figure this out. So if Biden gave humanitarian aid to Gaza, he was giving money to Hamas. And so is Keir Starmer. Anyway, meanwhile, in the middle of all this, we have U.S. Catholic Magazine. And U.S. Catholic Magazine, at the forefront of the news, they published an article this week called What Catholics Can Learn from Islam about the pursuit of happiness. What Catholics can learn from Islam about the pursuit of happiness.
Robert, didn't that sound like one of that dude's article? That guy who teaches at Rice University sociology. What's that guy's
Oh,
name?
Considine, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't that sound like one of his articles from like 5 years ago, 10 years
It
ago?
does. It does.
Sounds
But this
exactly
was
like one of his.
this was written by a Muslim, actually, Zainab Sayogan, and I had not heard of her before. But you'll like this. She says, in these challenging times, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad offer valuable lessons on nurturing community and joy in daily life that transcend religious boundaries. He did, didn't he? I mean, really. He has lots to tell us about nurturing community.
Is is this the guy? Is this the same guy who received in his revelation the claim that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are severe against disbelievers, merciful among themselves?
By
So
David, I believe that's Quran 48:29.
yeah, so is he the one who like insisted upon this, dare I say, two-tier system?
Maybe that's why the left likes him so much. All right, it's Super Chat time. Need a theme song for Super Chat time. Da 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 da. Am I going to get a copyright strike for that? Anyway. Here we go. Crazy Normies YT says, both of you and AP are my heroes. No, Crazy, you're my hero. Now, David Sumner, filmmaker. I noticed a common theme in the Quran. Anyone who refuses Islam must have bad motives. That's right. There's no good faith rejection of Islam in Islam. They know Islam is truth, but they're immoral in some way. You were quite right. Let's see what you got here in part 2. I was reminded how leftists accuse anyone disagreeing with them of being some kind of Istaphobe. Islam and leftism both assume all opposed must be evil. That's true. It's a good point.
And it's actually it's really dangerous and leads to violence. I mean, you see this in the Muslim in their sources about Muhammad being in Mecca, and the entire time he's in Mecca, he's telling his followers, "Yep, when the Jews see me, the Jews will acknowledge me as a prophet because they know me. They know I'm coming. I'm right there in their sources." And then he gets there, and they're ready to laugh him out of the city, thinking it's hilarious that this guy thinks he's a prophet. So what does he tell them? It's like, oh, they know it. They know him in there. They're lying, right? So it's not, hey, I'm obviously not a true prophet, and that's why they're rejecting me. It's they know I'm a true prophet, and they're going against me anyway, which means they're evil and they're actually against God, doing it knowingly. And because then according to Islam, the violence is justified because you're at war with God. You're at war with God and trying to cover up the true prophet he sent. And so, hey, it's okay to go on a killing spree. But I mean, think about that. That's what they do to everyone. To this day, when someone leaves Islam, they start saying, "Oh, well, you did it for money. You did it for this. You did it for that. You did it for women." It can't ever be someone who, hey, all the stuff you told me about Islam, this perfectly preserved book and these scientific miracles and Muhammad is the greatest man ever. I eventually looked these things up and found out it's nothing but lies. And so if the entire religion is nothing but lies, I'm out of the religion. They can't get their minds around someone reacting like that. So
Indeed.
it has to be someone who is knowingly, deliberately just rebelling against God. And then, oh, we can kill you.
Many, many years ago, when we had, Pamela Geller and I had the big rallies in New York against the Ground Zero Mosque, and we ended up beating the Ground Zero Mosque and keeping it from being built, I ran into Sharif El-Gamal one day in Manhattan, and he was the developer, the Muslim developer, who had been intending to build this 16-story mosque at Ground Zero. And the first thing he asked me was, do you really actually believe in what you're doing? And I was kind of surprised that he would ask me like that, but not surprised at all on another level because, as you say, they always think that the people who oppose them are out for money or out for fame or out for something else. And they cannot imagine somebody could oppose them for good faith reasons.
Yeah, think
And
about
so
that. I
I
mean,
was just
yeah,
amazed.
yeah. I mean, in his mind, you can't actually have a problem with a bunch of jihadis flying planes into buildings, killing thousands of people, leveling those buildings, and part of the damage was done to the building right around the corner, which was a Burlington, which was part of it was a Burlington coat factory, but part of the plane flies through there, damages the place, so they have to shut it down. And then, ooh, I got a cheap building because it's got a big hole in it. Let me buy that, and I'm going to tear it down and build a huge mega mosque right there at ground zero. You can't, you can't have a problem with that. Like an Islamic terrorist attack doing damage, and then it makes it cheap, and you use it to build a giant 13-story mega mosque. You can't actually have a problem with that. So what's your real reason, Robert?
Exactly. Must have had an ulterior motive.
Hey, Robert,
Yes, sir.
you brought up Sharif El Gamal. I just wanted to check out how that guy's doing. So I will be looking him up for a minute while you're taking super chats. I want to see
Okay.
how that dude's doing.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him lately.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's
I
what I
haven't.
mean. I want to see.
He was actually, I haven't heard from him at all since then, of course. But what's interesting about that is that he was saying that he had this great imam. And if I could just talk to him, then I would really understand about Islam and know that it was a religion of peace and that it was wonderful. And I would drop all my opposition. And I said, sure, I'll talk to him. Fine, set it up. And I gave him my contact info. He took it down. He said, I'll be in touch soon. Never heard from him again. Sharif, I know you're watching. I'm still ready to talk to your imam, but it might not go the way you think. Okay, Loaves of Bread says UK government can't take the freedom of speech. Doesn't exist. You were correct. Tesbot, maybe you could send a video message to Tommy's rally. I'm sure it would be welcome. That's a good idea, actually. We'll see if that ends up being possible. Let's see. Aisha's chest, Suna Nasai 3964, says, or is that one punch over? Oh, this is so complicated. One punch over Aisha's, whatever. Oh yeah, he punched me in the chest, which caused me pain. I get the reference. When you show more Momeen pics, remove your name, Robert, please. You're asking me to do something like that. That's complicated. Also, it's part of the ongoing joke that these jihadis end up with over my name. You got to have a little sense of humor here. But anyway, yeah, asking me to do something technological. Let's be serious. Okay, Seth, that Jewish ex-spy in the chat, says, saying Am Yisrael Chai got a man arrested in UK. Yeah, I actually saw that. Terrible. All right, our old friend, Apu Baker Al Puff Daddy, Dr. Wood, Mr. Spencer, President Trump humble bragged that he asked Israel not to attack Iran, and Israel complied. Should Israel attack or not? Why? Well, I believe that ultimately Israel will have to attack, or else Iran will get the nukes and nuke Israel. Trump didn't say they could never attack. He said they're in the middle of talks right now. The situation could change rapidly, in which case then they would be able to attack. So we'll see how things develop and hope
Yeah,
that...
here's the thing. I can see both views. I can see bombing the crap out of Iran. Anything that even looks, if it simply looked like a nuclear facility or something like that, I can see bombing the crap out of that. Not even allowing that to get off the ground. I can also see a case for, well, guys, look at how things are going. These guys lose more and more support over time. It's kind of a matter of time before the people just oust the government. And so why don't we just make sure that these guys do whatever we need, make deals and stuff, get them to not go nuclear, because as long as they don't go nuclear, their days are kind of numbered here. So I can kind of see either way. I think that's what's going on. There are people, let's go ahead and deal with this and bomb the crap out of them. And other people saying, actually, that they're rotting from within.
Yes.
I mean, Iran is now officially a Muslim minority country. That's the way things have gone for them in recent years.
That's one of the most astounding things that has happened in this century, really. That Iran, which is officially 99% Muslim, survey a few years back, only 40% of the people still identified as Muslim after 40 years of Islamic rule.
That's everyone. That's all the Muslims combined. That's Shias. That's every kind of Shia, every kind of Sunni, Quran only. Everyone adds up to 40%.
They're so sick of Islamic rule after 40 years that they're fed up with Islam itself. Interesting developments. Okay, Clory sends one of those stickers. Thank you very much. And let's see. Robert Michaels says, that sounds like an actor's name. Robert, would you go to a restaurant that serves haram versions of halal food? Pork shawarma, whiskey baklava. Baklava is not haram. You can get plenty of good baklava in non-Islamic contexts. My goodness, the Greeks originated it. What are you talking about? Or is that a low blow? I don't know. I don't want to eat spite food. I'd like to just go and enjoy a meal. I don't have to be showing somebody up to enjoy a meal, But if your restaurant succeeds, though, I'll be happy to give it a visit. What do you think, David? Would you go eat halal haram food?
Yeah, because they, I don't know, some of that Arab halal food's delicious. So if you made haram versions, I don't know, it'd be pretty good.
Okay. Count us in. Let us know when to be there. Okay, Zut Indub. Okay, says D-Dubs. Do you think that the Zut laughed at Muhammad's 1.8-inch sword?
You know what that's about, Robert?
I do know what it's about, but I'm leaving it to you to answer.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I don't know if they saw that side of him, so we won't know.
Okay.
Sounds like Muhammad was face down, butt up. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, goodness, yes. Miriam says, Mr. Robert, I love you. I love you too, Miriam. Grumpy Granny, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Grumpy. May I call you Grumpy, or is it Ms. Granny? Flipper says, Kurd Muslim Abbas Hangul raped 3 minors in Japan. 2 Japanese, 1 Kurdish. The leftist judge rewarded Abbas by giving his family asylum. Japan is going to be sorry if they keep that up, and that is not a threat, NSA. That is a prediction of strife coming from the migrants they are coddling. Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy, Mr. Spencer, I really enjoyed your interview on Unfiltered View. Why do Westerners still hold the belief that jihadis do not represent true Islam? Because they don't know anything about Islam, because the reality is too terrifying to contemplate, because they've been taught that to think otherwise is Islamophobic, because they've never really thought about it, and they think all religions are essentially benign and teach magnanimity. Anything else, David?
Yeah, you're bombarded with this your entire life here. See, you and I came after. I mean, you and I were before the time when they're really brainwashing kids, because people just weren't talking about Islam when we were in school. But the more recent generations, and I was surprised at this years ago. One of my sons, well, 2 of my sons, for a couple years went to a Catholic school up in the Bronx, just because it was significantly better than the public school by us. So sent them to the Catholic school there. But they got to the 9/11 story. So they got to, it was 9/11. It was 9/11, and they're going to talk about what happened on 9/11. And the teacher asked, so who was responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center? And I had told my son previously, be careful in the way you don't talk like I talk in my videos and stuff like that. So he was careful, and he said, extremist Muslims. And he said the entire class turned to him and started going, that's racist. That's racist. I mean, he's a kid in school, and they start going, they had already been trained.
Yep.
He didn't say Muslims. He didn't say anything. He said extremist Muslim. Like, how else could you possibly describe them without being dishonest, right? That's the nicest way to say what they were without lying, right?
So what did they say? Who did they say did it?
He said the teacher eventually agreed with him. It wasn't the teacher calling him racist. So all the students started instantly just saying racist, like they've been trained that way their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
He said the teacher ultimately agreed that it was Muslims who did it, but she had to do it in this weird roundabout way and so on. Well, I mean, what was getting to me was like this is a Catholic private school, and they're kids, and they're already trained as kids to instantly scream racist to anyone who actually speaks entirely truthfully and in the gentlest way of saying it accurately that you could possibly say. Very disturbing.
Yep, it's not going to end well.
Yeah. So anyway, the idea is if you're trained, if you're programmed that way your entire life, that you're actually evil if you state these basic facts. Well, it's hard to see. It's hard to catch on later on. That's why they like catching them while they're young.
That's it. All right, Flipper says there's an interview with one of the Japanese girls victim of Muslim Abbas Hangul. It's heartbreaking, and the girl was 12 years old when it happened. It's a bit old for this kind of line. Cynthia Ridgely, thank you very much. And then we go back to our friend Abu Bakr al-Pafdadi. Dr. Wood and Mr. Spencer, condolences for Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, two beautiful young people. Why do leftists take up jihad? How to counteract? What do you think, David?
Yeah, so those were the two people attacked in outside the Jewish Museum in D.C. They're on. Everyone ends up on the same side. Everyone who's trying to bring down Western civilization tends to click up, and a lot of them seem to. Initially, as far as like leaders and so on, as far as people who are actually smart and coordinating things, it's always, okay, yeah, we can team up with this group and that group and that group and that group and that group. We'll destroy Western civilization, and then our group will win, and then we can deal with these others, right? Like when Muslims team up with leftists, that's what they're thinking. We'll destroy these guys later, but we need them now. We need them now. So that's how they end up. But then, so that's the reasoning behind the alliance. But then the people who are products of the alliance, okay, you're just working together with jihadis your entire life, and so you end up carrying out the jihad, even though you're a leftist.
Yep. Well, the left, they're socialist internationalists. Islam is internationalist and it inculcates total obedience to the ruler. As Muhammad said, obey your ruler even if he is an Ethiopian with a head like a raisin. And so the left loves the idea of an authoritarian internationalist religion. It's just the kind of thing that they want to encourage. Sarah F. says, Robert, your laugh is charming as always. Sarah, your laugh is far more charming than mine. PB Law. Robert, going to email you. director@jihadwatch.org to email me. Ordering your latest book. Thank you. It's called Anti-Semitism, History and Myth, and it's available now. I'm a lawyer and was a tech exec. Rec film Farewell to Israel by Joel Gilbert explains history of Islam and how misunderstanding West will cause Israel and the West's demise on Tubi. I have not seen that. I know Joel. I know that he does some very important documentaries, so people might want to check that out. Abu Bakr al-Pafdadi, agree or disagree with Trump cut funds to Harvard? Trump is saying they have to protect the Jewish students there. And if it were any other students, this would not be controversial. If there were Methodist students getting beat up at Harvard, nobody would say, oh, we have to protect the integrity of the academic institution. They would be saying, of course, we have to crack down on this. If Muslim students were being attacked at Harvard, oh my goodness, we'd never hear the end of it. But Jewish students, then suddenly everybody's defending Harvard and saying it's freedom of speech. It's not about freedom of speech. It's about menacing the Jewish students. It's about blocking their way to classes. It's about calling them genociders all the time. This kind of thing is not befitting what is supposed to be an institution of higher learning. What do you think, David?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's an issue of hypocrisy. I'm just imagine if it were if something like happened to one Muslim student, if one Muslim student was blocked by Jewish students or something like that from entering a building or anything like that, it would be international news for the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, Sarah says, what's...
I
Yes,
have to say, in that circumstance, Muslims would be screaming to defund Harvard until they actually protect the Muslim students.
that's very true. Absolutely. Sarah F., what's gayer, Houthis dancing or Night Journey?
I'm going with Muhammad's night journey. If by Muhammad's night journey you mean his night journey to the men of Al Zut.
Yeah, that's really hard to top, so to speak. Eunuch Petsu says, in Sahara, small kitties are fed 7 liters of milk daily to fatten them up so that their bodies are thick enough to marry ASAP. YT Doc. Okay, thank you. Are you talking about maybe child marriage? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's talking about kids and not like we see kitties. Eunuch, we see kitties and we think cats. Those are, yeah, we think cats. We're thinking maybe you mean kids.
It's possible. It's very possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thing is going on. Songs of Relief says, if someone asked me what I believe, then started beating me, I think I would use elbows, knees, even teeth to escape. What do you think? Bad? Okay? Good? Well, I don't think anybody objects to self-defense. Do you object to self-defense, David?
Nope.
There you go. Maybe I'm not understanding the import of the question. I don't know. What do you think?
Yep, not sure.
Aramoff, the British are literally building Khilafat. Yes, they are, and they do not know it. But it will come upon them when it's too late, probably. David Sumner, filmmaker, there's so many Muslim countries that are completely dependent upon Western aid to avoid famine. If Europe goes the same path, that could lead to millions of Muslims dying from food scarcity. Now, wouldn't that be ironic? They go to Europe to get on welfare. They destroy the society so that the infidel state no longer exists, so they're not getting the welfare, and they start to starve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's craziest about all of this is if they actually get their way, they would end up destroying themselves.
Yeah, actually, that's why Islam is like the shark of human cultures. It has to move or die. And this is because it has no work ethic. That's actually the subject of my book after next, The Tragedy of Islam, Failure and Excuses, which will be out next spring. It's all done, but they're holding them up so they don't all bunch up together and people all don't buy them at once instead of not buying them one by one. And the tragedy of Islam is about how Islam is bad for individuals and societies, and it's bad for societies because it has no work ethic. The idea is to live off the dhimmis, but once you've bled the dhimmi communities dry, then you've got no steady source of income, and that's when the great Islamic empires of the past went into decline. And so they have to conquer new lands to subjugate more dhimmis to continue to live and fund their lifestyle to which they've become accustomed. Because ultimately, you can't overtax people and drive them into poverty and then expect they'll keep giving you the same amounts of money all the time. And so they have to move or die. They have to keep conquering and keep the jihad going. Anyway, that'll be out next year, probably about 9 months from now. The Tragedy of Islam, Failure and Excuses. Watch for it in all your local bookstores. Emmanuel of Christ says, hello, gentlemen. Should we Christians trust law enforcement agencies after what happened at the Curtis Culwell Center? That's the site of the Garland ISIS attack against our Muhammad event in 2015. Thinking about a career in national security, but not sure I can trust them. You can't trust them. Absolutely not. Does that mean that you should not go into the field? Not necessarily. You might be able to be there and be trustworthy in a field where many are not, and that would not be a bad thing. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I have to say two things mainly. One, there are intelligent and informed people at some levels in some of these organizations. I know because they've actually come to me. They've actually come to me to tell me about things that are endangering me. One time a Muslim told me to meet him somewhere and he was going to kill me. So I went down there and there were 4 soldiers standing there with machine guns. So there are people who are actually trying to protect us. there are other people who who are on the completely wrong side of things. So that's one thing, that there are, just because you have some bad people in some of these places doing messed up things and using their positions to do the wrong thing, doesn't mean you don't have other people who might be doing a bang up job. So that's one thing. The other thing is leadership in some of the in these places changes over time, right?
That's true.
So yeah, so someone who's pulling the strings at one point is not necessarily pulling the strings 10 or 15 years later. And so yeah, I wouldn't you could definitely go in there, and maybe you could help clean up the place.
Okay. Peace be upon me says, in your book, Syriac sources suggest that Momo came from Iraq. I highly agree with that. Momo traveled from Iraq to Syria and Jordan, king of Tayeye. Well, that's one possibility. John Davis says, do you think Pope Leo has ever heard of Aisha? I would bet $1,000,000 he's never heard of Aisha. If he does he care? I think if he did hear of Aisha, he might care. But what do you think, David? Do you think Pope Leo has ever heard of Aisha?
No idea. I'd be surprised if he had, probably a little bit, but I don't know anything about the guy. Time is going to tell where this guy stands, right? Because some things are going to happen, and we'll see how he reacts and responds afterwards, and that'll tell us whether we're dealing with someone like Frank, or who was the guy before him?
Benedict.
Benedict. Yeah, those guys had pretty different approaches. So we'll see where this guy lies on the spectrum.
Yeah, Benedict is the guy who quoted the Roman Emperor Manuel II Palaeologos, who said that Muhammad brought nothing new but what was evil and inhuman. And there were worldwide riots. Then came Francis. All right, David Sumner, filmmaker. How did Indonesia become Muslim? I've heard it was largely peaceful, not through conquest, but I haven't had the chance to delve deep into it. Yeah, it was largely peaceful, not through conquest, but there was quite a lot of pressure from various forces involved in it. This is something I think I need to write about, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. People think that Indonesia is the one place where everybody decided that Islam was wonderful and started to convert to it. It's not really that simple. It became a symbol for, in the first place, opposition to the Dutch colonial rule, and a lot of Indonesians began to convert as a result of that, and then others were intimidated into following through, because otherwise then they would look like they were on the side of the Dutch, and so on. And so it's not really just a simple and clear peaceful mass conversion. Okay, we have some Bible summary. My favorite keyboard crusaders. I would respectfully suggest that neither David nor I are keyboard crusaders. We have both been quite active and have both done many things in the real world aside from the keyboard. Is that not right, sir?
Indeed.
Holy JO3.
Nope. Don't read it. Don't fall for it.
I will not fall for it. Thank you for the warning. I'm an old man and I just will rush ahead. Loaves of bread. Mr. Spencer, how about a politically incorrect book about the last 250 years of Middle East history? Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. I'm going to think that over. I'm trying to think of whether I should write another one. You guys let me know if you think I should write another one. But you really ought to buy one of them if you really want me to write another one, because publishers don't like people who write books and then don't sell any. Victoria Knox, Abdul Spammer in chat. If you need a mod, I'm down. I don't really know what that means. People have asked me before about being a moderator, and I'm all for it, but then somehow it never happens. So please email me at director@jihadwatch.org and we'll set it up.
Yeah, so it's easy to make someone a mod right there, but you generally kind of want to vet people ahead of time. Like I've made people, that's why I usually don't make people mods unless I kind of know them, because I've made people mods before. I just make someone a moderator and then they like block every Muslim who comments. And I'm like, I don't want you blocking every Muslim who comments. I'm actually interested in hearing from Muslims. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, well,
yeah. What would be good, Robert, is to, because I wanted to do this, I've just never gotten around to doing it, but I wanted to like basically just write out some guidelines. Okay, here's what you like put people on timeout for here's what you might block people for or something like this, but don't block people unless they do X, Y, or Z or something like that.
Yeah, that would be good to have, especially for somebody like me where I don't have any idea what really is done in this line. Some Bible Summary says clarification. Why aren't recent DE shootings on Trop web? Oh, that's the Religion of Peace website. Keep truthing. I don't run Religion of Peace website. Neither does David. So I would suspect that neither one of us can speak for the good folks that run that website. It's a very important, valuable website. It has news that I myself don't even see, and I spend hours every day looking for jihad news, and so I highly recommend that site. But sometimes, of course, everybody misses something or his judgment might differ. Don't hold it against him. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the Super Chats. David, thank you very much for being with us tonight and for your wisdom on these issues. If there's any more jihad, we might be calling upon you again in the unlikely event that jihad activity happens in the next week. And until then, everyone, please remember, pray, hope, do not worry.